have Kshitij Agarwal, the CEO of Diella Global Services Limited, joining us live from Bengaluru. Also, Dr. Michael Owens is joining us, Mayor of Marbleton and President, US Global Center for Cyber Policy, joining us live from Georgia in United States. Well, Dr. Owens, I'm going to be coming to you first. It's very interesting to have this concept of a minister who's going to work without fear or favor, who is completely incorruptible. It's like a dream come true. However, a minister like this would be hackable. Red flags for you?
Well, thank you. I appreciate you having me on. And, you know, this is without a doubt a bold step. It's a bold experiment in a lot of ways. I do think it's, you know, the statement around incorruptible, I don't know about that, right? I mean, the moment you digitize some sort of power, you invite hackers to come in. You know, it is true that, you know, AI does not get tired. It does not delay paperwork. It doesn't play politics. You know, it applies rules consistently, which could make the government go faster and could most definitely reduce corruption. But calling something incorruptible, I think is, again, a bit aspirational. But I do think it's a solid step forward. Obviously, with a lot of challenges, you just went over the corruption index. I think there's some amount of trust that it brings into the system. And again, at the end of the day, I think it is a powerful move forward. But I would stop short of saying it's truly an incorruptible system.
Well, perhaps there are many others who'd agree with you, because at the end of it, where does the accountability really lie? But Kshitij, you must explain to us, in a system such as this, how would it work? Let's say today India says that let's have our own AI bot, which is going to oversee all the tendering system, state to state, even in the central level. Who will develop it? Will it be a company? How do we ensure that the company does not have a little rigging system in place? How do we know that the government is not adding its own 2 bits to it? How does it affect the AI bot once a government exits and a second government of a different party, perhaps a political rival, comes to power? How do we move forward in this? If you can explain the mechanics of it.
Yeah, of course, bringing this to India can be a big change, right? As you know, India spends billions and billions of dollars, right, in tenders, and even if we are able to save maybe 2% of the cost, you know, that will go back a long way to the citizens, right?
Absolutely.
So I think it's exactly great move which India should take. But of course, you know, with India, you know, as you mentioned, India is a different state, is different from central and all. I think the idea should be that we should start small, right? So instead of going across the pan India, we can start with a smaller project, right? We can maybe start with, let's say a couple of departments, maybe highway projects or defense, or, you know, a couple of smaller projects, right? Where we can try to implement this kind of AI bot, which is not exactly like a minister, but at least like a procurement manager, you can say, right? Which can at least validate all the, the tenders. It can validate all those. It can decide which ones to choose it, but most importantly, it should also show us why it is choosing the one over other, why it succeeds, right? So it's very important to keep it transparent. Okay. Plus, of course, we do need a governing body. We might need an independent governing body, you know, irrespective of the government, right? Who should be responsible to validate? Because as you rightly said, AI is still a baby, right? It can still do mistakes. It can still hallucinate, right? So we cannot, just rely completely on that, but we can definitely use it to expedite the process. We should use it to make a decision. And then someone validates those and make sure they put a stamp, and at least someone is accountable, right? So if AI do a mistake, because let's say if a wrong tender was passed and, you spend millions of dollars and it fails, who is accountable? You cannot get hold of the AI. So I think there should be a committee in place, which is independent of the governments, so like ED, for example, which is independent. So similar kind of like a independent governments should be there. I think, which is very important.
I think that's an important point that you've made. It's not something that the government should be doing. It should be perhaps an independent body, so that it does not get impacted by which party is in power, which government is there. It doesn't matter. Right. Irrespective of that, independently, it should be held. Of course, that will be a long way to for us to figure out. But Dr. Owens, one thing is certain. When you have AI, it is essentially dispassionate. It will rely only on facts and whatever has been fed to it as per rules. But there is no level of human empathy. Can we have governance without human empathy?
Yeah, that's a great question. And this is where I put my other hat on as mayor of the city of Mableton, Georgia. where you have to lead a city, a government with a level of empathy there, right? What is good for the overall, for the people. Now, that does not mean that that cannot be baked in, if you will, into the actual learning of the system. In every system, including, tenders and procurement as a whole, there are going to be qualifiers there. In the U.S., we often have things for veterans or for small businesses or things of these nature.
Absolutely.
So you can still code in elements that are, I won't say human-like, but they're parameters that help to level the playing field if that's what the goal is, or if you want to have certain parameters, certain markers, some metrics that can be coded in. Because at the end of the day, you have to remember, Diella at the end of the day is lines of code, right? I mean, although I think she represents something bigger in this case, right? The fight for a cleaner, more transparent government, but also it could lead to a more ethical government to where we mentioned before, corruption and bribes aren't there, but also the way to say, these are the criteria that we want to move forward with and have the ability to look across. I mean, anytime you're talking about human, it's basically sequential, right? They're looking at one thing at a time. The idea that for an AI bot or agent to look at hundreds of thousands of millions of different transactions and be able to discern what are the trends, where are things going, where should we get better, how are we not serving certain groups of people or certain entities that we can move forward. That is a very powerful opportunity that's there. I think, her role to oversee procurement is at the very heart of corruption itself, to have a system that can take out the anomalies that a human can have or explicit biases even that humans may have. So I think it's a great opportunity. It is a symbolic step in some ways, but I also think it's one that's very, very helpful for the country.
But Dr. Owens, you made a very relevant point there. Essentially, on one hand, let's say you have a tender that you float as a government. You have a huge, large corporate who wants to bring in and bid for this tender. On the other hand, you have the small mom and pop shop which says, against the odd, let's bid for the tender as well. You may have other issues other than the rules and regulations, other considerations. Let's say there is a corporate which is more environment friendly, may have other returns which may not be monetary. So you may want to choose something beyond. That's where the human element comes in, empathy comes in. So I'm going to come across to you, Kshitij. How do we cheat the system? Because one thing that Dr. Owens also pointed out, it's easy to, AI, as even you were saying, is a baby. It does get delusional. Also, it also comes with inherent biases of the people who designed it.
Right, exactly. So again, you understand the way AI works is all from the historical data.
Yes.
And I'm assuming like the data which is from Albania, right, who is using it to train the system. What is the proof that the previous records it has been using, let's say, a specific firm for, let's say, a road contract or a specific firm for a defense contract? How do we not know that, it is falsely, claiming it to be the best company out there, right? So one, it is very important to validate all the previous history, right, and then clean the data as much as possible.
Right.
Right. Secondly, you mentioned about how to cheat it. Of course, there are 100 ways. As Indians, I think we are very strong in finding a loophole, right, in everything. So I'm sure there will be 100 ways, but I think the point should be how to make it more secure, right? That's more important, so that we cannot work around it. So I think, as I mentioned earlier, an authority, a regulator, an agency should be needed, right, to make sure that whatever AI is focusing.
Absolutely. Right now, however, we don't have either the rules or an authority, not even laws which are governing AI. And perhaps that's where we go down the slippery slope. But it's been a pleasure, Kshitij, having you on the show, as well as Dr. Owens explaining to us the administrative parts, the merits and the demerits of integrating artificial intelligence and governance. Hopefully today you've learned something new. I know I certainly have. Without a short break, don't go anywhere.